What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Cards and Coffee. I'm very excited for today's episode because I'm going to be linking up with a really good friend of mine, Kyle Crowfoot. He just got top 64 at the most recent Nationals with his P.U.N.K Therion deck list. We're going to go through his deck list, go through the card by card, explain exactly what he's playing and why he's playing it. But before we go and link up with him, please go grab yourself a cup of coffee or something. That way you guys can sit down and tune in. Let's do this. All right, we're here finally with a good friend of mine, Kyle Crowfoot. Very excited for this because he had a hell of a run at this year's Nationals. Kyle, welcome to the channel. I'm very happy you're here. What deck do you have for us today?
Thank you, Justin. I appreciate it. It's going to be P.U.N.K Therion. You are the guy I was working with when I was looking into P.U.N.K Synchro, but it was just such a toss-up. I really didn't know if I wanted to play a combo deck where you either open really, really well or you open really awkward, wonky hands. And so I just wanted to play something that's a little more just standard, like you open kind of the same hands every game. And other than the mill aspect being kind of a luck factor, the deck played really well, like regardless. Like you could still do your normal turn skip combo without needing the Therions, and then the Therions are just like icing on the cake. So
right.
That's why I chose to play that.
Yeah, and in just looking at it, you have a bunch of one-card starters, and then there's just a bunch of powerhouse extenders for the deck. You have a good amount of hand traps. It's a solid 40. Really, just looking at the list, it's super solid. So I have to ask, why did you decide to take this? Aside from consistency's sake, was there a specific matchup you were thinking of? Or was it at the end of the day, you knew you were going to have a lot of rounds, you just wanted the consistency? What was kind of the logic and the approach?
Yeah, so the main thing really was just that the Therions play really well into a lot of the meta. Your Flunder matchup is actually pretty good because not only is Lily a wind, so you get to play around the statue, but the Therions are just so overwhelming. If you start doing those first, the Flunder player has to react right there, and then you get to do all your P.U.N.K stuff. I also really liked it because there's not a natural blowout card, where the P.U.N.K Synchro deck, Token Collector can hurt in certain spots. Barrier just shuts off all your synchro plays. And just Sword Soul's the same thing. Token Collector, Barrier. Like a lot of these decks, they lose to like one or two like powerhouse cards, and I don't want to lose to those cards in a 11-round event where someone just flips a D Barrier and I can't play for that turn.
Right. No, that's a smart call. So curious, your matchups, what were they throughout the tournament?
Yeah, so luckily, because it's Nationals, a lot of people will come and they will just sign up, get the free stuff, and leave. So I actually had a round one win because no one showed up. Yeah, it was pretty nice. It was nice because you kind of get those early morning jitters out the way. Round two, I played against a Thunder deck. I don't know. I guess he was just doing like P.U.N.K Thunder combo. Round 3, I played Despia. Round 4, I played Sword Soul. Round 5, I played P.U.N.K Synchro, and that was my first loss.
Okay.
Round 6 was another Sword Soul. Round 7 was a Despia. Round 8 was a Sword Soul. Round 9 was Striker. Round 10, I beat Marincess. And then round 11, because I was already in the top, I didn't really... I'll say I didn't try my hardest that game. I was just worried about... and he beat me, the Dragon Link Brave guy. So overall... And then in top 64, I lost to Despia. So 3 Despia, 3 Sword Soul, a Marincess, a Striker, a Dragon Link, a P.U.N.K Synchro, and a Thunder.
Sounds like you basically played against most of the meta, really. It's what you would basically expect at a Nationals.
Yeah, I was expecting a lot more P.U.N.K Synchro, honestly. Like, I did not... I built my deck more for P.U.N.K Synchro and Sword Soul, and Despia, my side deck's more catered towards, but I only played against one P.U.N.K Synchro, which I'm glad, because that's one of those decks where they just open super standard and open the Water Girl, Gamma, and a Teleport, and you're just losing that match.
Right, standard.
Yeah. So I was really glad I played against a lot of Sword Soul, and like Sword Soul I think is like kind of free for this deck, and Despia, the Therions play into the Despia stuff really well.
All right, well, let's jump into this list. I'm very excited.
Yeah, so we'll start off. You have 12 one-card P.U.N.K starters. So you have your 3 Zayamin, your 3 Foxy Tune, your 3 Ogre Dance, and I count Teleport as another Punk starter. So you have 12. And that gives you, if you do the math wise, it's about an 85% chance to draw one of these cards.
Mm-hmm.
And just off of that, you get to do your Mill 5 Turbo type play.
Gotcha.
So I wanted to make that as consistent as possible, and that's why I kept it at 40 also.
Makes sense.
Yeah, and then you have to play your 1 Deer Note, and you have to play your 1 Shark. The Shark's really good. It makes Teleport, and it makes the Foxy Tune 1 card also, like, plays. Because you can just search the Shark, and then fuse, and then summon your Deer Note and another Zeoman out the deck.
Right, because that's a problem with Punk Synchro. If you only open the Foxy Tune, you can go Almond and then search an Ogre and then, search another Almond and normal it, and there's a Halka-Fibrax play or a Cherubini play if you're playing that kind of build. But at least with the Sharkusai, at least now you have a full combo, basically getting you a rescue cat for the deck, which is pretty crazy. Right.
That was the Punk engine. Moving on to the Therions, this is the part where I think if you watch anyone's list, it always changes. So this is not to say this is like a standard lineup or this is the best lineup. It is what it is. Mm-hmm. So I played 3 Lily, 1 Regulus, 1 Bull, and 1 Foom. I prioritize Lily over the other ones because it always gets you the field spell to get another copy of a Therion. So to me, it just felt like playing more Stratoses and less of the other guys is basically the same as playing the other guys also.
Of course,
you'll see a lot of lists play 2 to 3 King and like 1 to 2 Lily because they just want to draw the Regulus and just summon it immediately. They don't want to have to try to search for it, but I think Lily's better because Lily plus any other Therion is always going to get you 2 cards. So that's the approach I went with it. And then I don't play the Duke, which is the level 8 light one that's a psychic. Mm-hmm. So the main issue I ran into this deck was drawing too many Therions. That's everyone's complaint about Therions. Like, they're like, you're just going to draw 2 or 3 and you can't play the game and it sucks. So I trimmed down to 6, the smallest number I think you could play that was like meaningful. Mm-hmm. And the Duke just doesn't do anything once you summon it. It helps protect your board, but that's not very relevant. And the only thing relevant really about it is being a light and it's psychic. So you can summon it by equipping punks, or it's a light to mill off Chaos Roller. Other than that, it just really doesn't do it.
Makes sense. I know coming up into the event, we were going back and forth on the Therion list, and at one time you had at least 2 or 3 more Punk Therion monsters. You were also playing the D-Draw for the deck, and as you can see, you pivoted away from that. Was it a consistency thing that kind of made you want to pivot that route, or did you just feel like it wasn't solving enough issues with the deck by playing the D-Draw, or was it a little more win more, or what was kind of the logic for making the switch to a smaller count?
So the D-Draw got cut because I wanted to make it 40. I really did crunch the numbers on this deck, and drawing, if you kept it at 40, you had 85% chance for any punk. You'll also notice, and we'll talk about it later, the hand traps are also 12. So you have the same math probability wise to draw any hand trap and any punk at the same time. And to draw 2 of them is 47%. So a little under a coin flip to draw 2 hand traps, a little under a coin flip to draw 2 punks. And so I wanted to keep it at 40 to keep that math solid. And the D-Draw was just the most expendable card. And then, the last card was Jet. That's what does your turn skip. I like Jet over Plague. I see that some people were playing Plague because they can just summon Chaos Ruler, Plague, and the Hulk. My issue with that is that it makes your end board less strong because you'll lose a card off your Jet to summon it. But the trade-off you get is summoning Hot Red. And so having Hot Red to negate a card and then skipping their turn with your Hot Red, your Jet, and your Hulk summoning out formula, I just felt was way more strong, especially because you have so many Light and Darks to add off of your Chaos Ruler. It just naturally makes it a 2-card combo. You'll get a card, pitch it, and
no, that makes a lot of sense. Plus, the scariest thing about when you decide to run the turn skip combo is your opponent obviously has the priority to activate the first card in the main phase. So if it's something that will make your Hot Red miss timing, it can be very awkward when trying to chain Halka-Fibrax to bring out the formula and then try to tag into that, etc., etc. So by putting that Hot Red out there, you just guarantee whatever that first card is, you can negate it, and then you can start using all your quick effects from there.
Yeah, exactly. And the Hot Red, being able to have Jet gives you access to summoning Hot Red if you're going second. And when you run something over with Hot Red and deal damage, you can summon back out your tuner, which would be the Jet.
Yeah.
And now you have a turn skip on their turn that if you played Plague, you would only be able to get to do with Valor. But you have more, like, having the Jet's also a machine, which is super relevant in that aspect because you get to summon King equipping it. And just having Jet, it basically is going to do the same thing as Plague, except it's level 1, which makes your Hot Red plays better, and it's also a machine. So that's just ultimately the reason why. So yeah, we'll move on to the hand traps. 3 Ash, 3 Valor, 3 Nib, and 3 Imperm. So the other route that a lot of Punk Therion lists I saw were playing is they play more like stop hand trap cards, and so you'll see them play Tactics, you'll see them play Gamma because they're usually playing the D draws and other cards. You'll see them play Crossout. My issue with that was those cards they're very good going second in the right hands. I'm personally not a fan of Gamma. I don't like that card very much. I know it's a very powerful card. It's just super win more. So
the hand traps all performed pretty well. No hand trap you missed or one that was super faithful to you?
Yeah, no, they were all really good. So the reason I did 12 also is having 3 Valor and 3 Imperm with your Nibs gives you... Yeah, basically you have 33% chance to draw your Nib, and then I believe with a 6 of, it turns into a roughly 20% chance to draw Nib Valor, Nib Imperm, and that will just crack any board in the game.
Right.
That summons more than 5 times. And so that was why I played 3 Imperm and 3 Valor, just to pair it with that Nib. Valor's also just super crucial in this deck because of Selene combo lines.
Right.
And being a level 1 also is really good. With a Therion, with a level 7 Therion makes a Chaos Ruler, with your actual Chaos Ruler makes Hot Red. It's just, yeah, Valor's just being a level 1 light spellcaster is just so good.
Right. And speaking of Nib, it just synergizes insanely well with the next card, Therion Disc Coliseum, being able to just set up so many crash plays with it as well. Did that ever come up for you today or for the tournament?
Yeah, that came up multiple times. So Nib was also just as synergistic with Valor, just like Valor is, because it's light, so you can get it off Ruler. So when I do a full combo and I mill a Nib off my Ruler, I just feel like I'm always winning that game. Because you have to try to beat a turn skip and a Nib, and if I have the Therion engine going at all, it's just really hard for them to win that game, unless they just cheese you with Mystic Bind. So it really was that powerful. And yeah, so when people summon a bunch of monsters and you Nib them, you keep the token in attack, because if you have Disc Coliseum, you'll go attack with your Nib into their token, you'll dump a Therion, and then all your Therions are now live in your hand. It was just so powerful. Like, people always wonder why I put it in attack, and they see me crash, and they're like, oh no, that's so not good. So yeah, that field spell, we'll just talk about the field spell now, I guess, because that's probably like the best card in this deck. Whenever you want to look at a deck, you want to look at like what's the best card in my deck, and it's Therion Disc Coliseum. It has 3 points of card advantage. Number 1, it just searches you right when you activate it. So already it's decently good. The second part of protecting your monsters by dumping, it helps make your board harder to crack, and it helps you enable plays like with Nib, or even just like a little Punk that you crash into one of their monsters to get your Therion going. And the third effect, which is just puts it over the top, is the fact that if any monster dies by battle, yours or theirs, you get to add a Therion back. Just gives you a way better grind game than the Punk Synchro deck.
Right.
Or any deck, really. Like that, the Therion Disc Coliseum just grinds and gives you so much card advantage over your opponents. The Endless Engine aggro system is the second best card in your deck. It's not technically a Therion, so you can't search it with Lily, but it might as well be. It's a Foolish Burial for any Therion card, so you can dump the field spell as well. And you can only use one of the effects once per turn, but the other effect is you could put it back to the bottom to add a Therion card. So if you just have just the Endless system, you could just dump a field spell, do your Punk combo. Next turn, if you have one of your machines engraved, or if you have the Deer Note, which is a warrior, you can search the bull. You just put the aggro system to the bottom, get back your field spell, and you can get any Therion you want at that point. And you could just keep the game going that way. And then the last spell, other than teleport, we already talked about it, was the Call by the Grave. I wish I could have more copies of this card. This card's insane. Like
It's gotta
it
go,
stops.
man.
It stops Scythe Lock. It stops other hand traps. It stops. I mean, it's basically just a trap card, but going first or second. Like Call by the Graves is so good. It can turn off the Despia cards like Brandon in red. It just has so many applications. I can't play a deck with this not in my main deck. It just can't.
Right. So the only question really for the main deck that I have is there's no main deck Mystic Mine out. So what was your game plan for game 1 if you did run into mine?
Yeah, so I wasn't super afraid of mine because you actually skip their turn if your combo goes off and they don't have a way to stop the turn skip. So if I skip their turn, they can't mine me. The only thing that's rough is if they just go first card they activate is mine, then I might have like a little issue because I can like negate it with hot red or I can bounce it with a Therion card. But ultimately that's a little rough. But other than that, if they activate any card first and you just skip their turn, they can't mine you after. So I didn't really care in that aspect. Also, one thing that did come up one game in the tournament is the Endless Engine aggro system can loop itself. So you actually cannot deck out in this deck. So yeah, being able to essentially what will happen is if you have 2 Endless Engines in your graveyard and if you have 6 cards in your hand, you'll activate the Endless Engine, putting back your monster, and you'll discard the monster for turn. And then on your next turn, when you draw an Endless Engine, you'll have 7. You'll use the 1 in graveyard, put it back to the bottom, add a Therion, and then you just go to your end phase, discard the Endless Engine you drew and your Therion.
Gotcha. Yep.
So it's always a deck loop. So you cannot deck out. So they have to try to kill you. And how crazy your board is, plus your hand traps, plus your field spell, it's really hard for them to try to kill you when they want to. So that wasn't it wasn't a super viable option game 1s, just because you don't want to kill the time. You rather just kind of push to the next game, win that game, and go to the next one. But games 2 or 3 where you can't afford to lose another game, I'm just gonna sit and loop my deck. Honestly, it's just. But I also side mine outs. But like if I didn't have a mine out and for whatever reason your game 1 was terribly long, you just sit and loop your deck and make them come to you.
All right, moving on. Extra deck or side? Do you have a preference?
Go extra deck first. All right. First, you have the Rising Carp. That's basically there for your Shard Kusai. It makes your Punk combos 1-card combos. Nothing too fancy there. Formulas for your turn skip. Formula being able to draw a card because Hulk says it's a synchro summon is insane. I drew so many like Valor's Ashes or Nibs off that card. It just was so unfair. And then it's a machine for Regulus too. Funny enough. So,
that's true. I didn't think about that.
It was so good. And then Chaos Ruler, this is the heart and soul of your deck. It makes the Punk engine insane. It gets your Therions going. It helps you make hot red. It's a level 8 for your rank 8s. Like it just does everything in your deck, honestly. Like you summon this every game if you didn't break. Hot red, that's what you want to make on your end board. So you have the hot red, you'll have your Jet Synchron on the board, and you'll have the Hulk. Kind of what Justin was saying. Being able to hot red the first card they play and then skip their turn is just so powerful, especially because you get a draw off the formula and then the draw for turn. If you have any Therion card plus your 4K hot red monster, then you just win that game. They can't come back, or they have to stop you on your second turn, and then they'll lose all their cards to where they can't win on their turn again. So hot red. That's why hot red was better for that reason. Baron de Fleur. This comes up when you have a level 7 Therion and a Punk, so like Zayamin or Sharkusai. It also comes up, funny enough, when you can't turn skip them, but you end on like Regulus or any level 8 monster on the board. You can Hulk into Formula, draw a card, and then summon Baron on their turn. I actually did that a few times. You Regulus negate something, summon Hulk, draw a card off Formula, and then make Baron, because once they activated the first card, you can now start doing stuff in open game state. And just summoning Baron after you Regulus, they have to play through 2 negates and you just drew a card.
Yeah, that's pretty solid, especially since there's so many hand traps in the meta. So while hitting the turn skip is also a very powerful thing, you're not always guaranteed to see it, even though you do have a bunch of 1-card starters. Just whether you hit it or not, at least you have these insurance policies to fall back on, which really what I think makes this deck so great.
Yeah, and it's even nice. It's even better because Baron gets to pop a card on your turn. So when you're pushing through boards, I'll sometimes just have like a bowl. I'll pop a card and then just have Zayama make Baron after. And so it's 2 pops and I have a negate on your turn, which is like really hard to deal with. And then if it comes back to my turn, it summons a Regulus out of my graveyard or a hot red. I just win that game. It's just, it's just so powerful that it gets to bring back something at the end too. Amazing Dragon. This is really good. This is your monster you summon when you don't turn skip them and you don't make Baron. So you'll usually have hot red Hulk. And so you'll hot red something. Hulk will special out the formula to draw a card. And then you'll use the formula and the hot red to make Amazing Dragon. On summon, it's a compulse. And then if they don't deal with it on your next turn, it just brings back a punk monster in your graveyard once per turn. Yeah, so it's another one of those cards. It's just a dynamite card. Like it bounces a card, and then if you don't deal with it, it helps me explode next turn again. So
yeah, it's a pretty crazy card. And like we were just talking about, just another insurance policy, because there may be times where you don't have access to your Jet Synchron, or maybe you don't have access to the light and dark to bring back the hot red. So having something to sink into on your opponent's turn just makes it to where you have another interruption, even if you don't get to turn skip, essentially.
The turn skip, as easy it is to do with hand traps, it doesn't usually land. I think I've only did it like maybe a couple of times at the tournament, but I definitely always ended on like Hulk with a way to synchro on their turn. And so even though I didn't skip their turn, they used 1 or 2 hand traps, and I still end on either a Baron or an Amazing Dragon or a hot red on their turn. It was still usually enough to get the Psychic End Punisher. This is honestly just like the best synchro on your extra deck, even past the turn skip guy. You just can't touch it, and you already pay life points in your natural combo, and you crash stuff with your Therion Disc Coliseum. So just being lower life than them and summoning this is just such a powerhouse card. Like I summon this against Despia every game I can, and it almost wins me every game against Despia because they cannot get over it. You just go into battle phase, pump your guy, pass your turn, and then if they go into their next battle phase, they die if they ever touch it, and you just win the game that way. And the last card was the King Calamity. You have to be very careful with this card because it can miss timing. So you always have to, on like open game state, activate Hulk to summon to draw a card, and then after you draw your card, if they have nothing, changes like Speed Spell 2 or higher, then you go the Formula Synchron to summon the King Calamity. Going into the XYZs, you have the Zombie Vampire. I personally don't like this card. I really don't. I know everyone hoops and hollers and says that it's so good that you just get to mill 9 in your deck, but there was one time where I actually summoned it and one time where I milled something good for my opponent, and it just made me not like this card at all. Like you almost can always do your combo.
I totally understand. I know, like, this was like in the Punk Therion list that I was playing, I was always taking this card in and out because it's one of those cards that you never really want to summon, but there are times where you feel you're so close to being able to full combo them, so you kind of want to go for it, but there is that risk of, well, punishing yourself, or God forbid you hit something like an Enchantress as well, or, you know, any of that nature. This card is both amazing and also very risky.
That exact scenario happened. I luckily hit a tuner, so then I was able to make Howlett after and do my combo. Okay. But I definitely milled an Enchantress for somebody, and I think I think it was the same Despia guy. It was like Enchantress plus Tragedy, and he was like, "Oh, okay, I guess I get to skip your turn, but I gave you 2 free cards." So right. I really didn't like it that much. At the times it came up, it was good, but just like hoping to mill 4 and hoping to hit a tuner from either pile is just so risky that like I just can't condone actually liking this card that much, but it is somewhat necessary. So the next XYZ that I see a lot of people play the Hope Harbinger over is Divine Dragonite Felgrand. So this guy was really, really good this weekend. So during either player's turn, you detach a card and you just negate a face-up monster's effects that turn. And then they're unaffected by other card effects, which is pretty relevant because Despia can't fuse with the card. And also, if you target your own Felgrand, it's just so hard to get over. Like, just Felgranding your own card and them having to try to get over a 2800 monster they can't touch with card effects is pretty relevant. And the last part that was really good about it is when you summon it on your turn, you detach a Therion or a ruler to negate one of their cards, so it helps you break their board, and then you get to summon back your ruler that turn, or you get to summon a Therion out of your hand with the one that you had underneath the Felgrand you detached. So like it
Right.
helps you push on your turn, and then on their turn it's still a negate.
Yeah, it
Which is
sounds
like
like a very versatile card for the deck for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it being light too is just a little icing on the cake just for ruler.
True.
But yeah, mainly it was to either keep my ruler in the graveyard the turn I summon a rank 8, or put it underneath it and then help break boards because you can negate their cards on your turn and then on their turn. So I liked it over Harbinger because I played against 3 Sword Souls, and I think I made it once or twice against the Sword Souls. And all the times that I would have made Harbinger, they would have just summoned 2 Tenyis and rolled over.
Yeah, that would have been a sad feeling for sure.
Yeah, where Felgrand at least gets to do something. So I always liked Felgrand over it. And the last card was Zeus for the XYZs. I don't think I ever summoned it all weekend, but
Oh wow.
it's there. I might have summoned it once, and it was a game I don't even know if I won. But it does come up. It's a really good card. It just never came up in this scenario, just because I only played the Vampire, which normally you'll just link off anyways into help, and the Felgrand, which usually you'll keep on your board, or it'll have 0 materials, and then Zeus isn't that relevant anyways.
Right.
But
I will say, though, of all the rank 8s you could play to go into Zeus, I actually like this synergy with Felgrand just being potentially something that can freely swing without worrying about being affected by anything, to at least set up a Zeus play if you wanted to, whereas something like Titaniclad or your zombie is a lot more vulnerable. And like you said, with the zombie, you're most likely linking it off, and the Hope Harbinger, you're typically trying to keep it on the field to control the game state.
Shout out to Lex. I'm going to give him the shout out for this Relinquished Anima pick. This card, a lot of people don't play around it. They leave stuff in their column 2 or column 4, and you just get a free monster you get to eat with Anima. You mainly play it only for Jet. If you hard open Jet and you have a bunch of Therions, it just helps you make a 1-card Hulk and gets a Therion out of your hand, so you can use the other ones.
Right.
But just that extra bonus of them not playing around Anima, and I think I took a Mirror Jade with this once.
Ooh.
And another one I baited a Shishao negate in the Sword Soul matchup. Anima was the MVP this weekend. Hulk, I'm not going to explain it too much. It does your turn skip. It does all your combos. There's nothing real fancy about it. Selene, this helps you do the 2-card OTK with your regular Punk engine. Basically, you just, instead of summoning out Jet, you summon out a Veiler, make Selene, go into Access Code, and then you'll have your ruler engraved if you have a Light and Dark, and Access Code plus your ruler's 8,300.
Right.
Plus any Therions is like over 10,000, you're winning that game. So Selene's there, and then Access Code is just Access Code. I can't really try to sell you any more on that card. So going on to the side deck. So the biggest card in my side deck that made me like this deck so much was Token Collector. Being able to discard this card with a Punk, or being able to mill it with Chaos Ruler, was just so powerful to me with how much it shuts off your Sword Soul matchup or other adventure decks. Just for that reason, this is why I didn't play Sword Soul or the Synchro deck either, is because I knew this card was either at 1 in everyone's main deck because of Riser, or it was at 3 in everyone's side deck. And I can't play a deck knowing that someone gets to dump it in their natural combo games 2 and 3. 2 Droll. So Droll and the next card, Dark Ruler, I was stuck between 3 of either of each. So 3 Droll was really good against some of the Rogue decks and the Punk adventure decks, but you get destroyed by Gamma. And after watching a lot of people's lists, a lot of people played Gamma. And so Droll was one of those cards where if they Gamma me, I just lose. If they don't Gamma me, I win. And Dark Ruler was one of those cards where if they don't play around it, I win. If they do, it's really rough. So I just did 2 and 2. Also, some of the Rogue decks that just make Lord's boards lose to Dark Ruler. So I wanted it against those decks no matter what. And then Droll was... You can also side against those decks, but Droll is just really good against more like the top combo decks of the format. Going into the back row hate, I have the 3 Twin Twisters. Those were just really good. I actually side back row hate against Despia. I don't like siding other cards like Crows or anything against that matchup. I don't mind if they have a Mirror J banish. What's ultimately going to make me lose that game is when they have the Mirror J banish, plus they can summon Guardian Chimera and resummon their Mirror Jade. So if you just destroy the Brandon Red, like if you go to pop it with Twin Twisters, and they have to chain it, then they lose their Guardian Chimera because they're not going to summon it when you have no board, and they lose the second Mirror Jade banish because they'll just have they only get their one banish. So
Right.
I side Twins against that matchup. I side against all the back row decks, and Twin performed really well. Every time I drew it, it was very powerful. And then this was the mine out that you were concerned about going into this event was Galaxy Cyclone. So it's another back row hate, so you still side it against your back row decks, but it's the same thing as Token Collector, where if I draw it, I can discard it or I can mill it, and it's still going to be a mine out in my graveyard.
Right.
So yeah, so if it's in my hand, I pop a set card, already decent against the back row decks. And if it's in the graveyard, I can banish it to pop a face-up spell trap. Basically, if I just milled that off Ruler or drew it and discarded my Punk, I just felt so safe. Like, I didn't care about mine. That means I'm probably turn skipping you, and it was just very powerful. And the last back row hate was Red Reboot. Honestly, this was super powerful against the back row decks, and I also side this in against Sword Soul, because they always try to side in Rivalry or Anti-Spell. So Red Reboot came in against those types of decks too. And it performed very well. I can't really say anything about it. It's at 1 for a reason. The other two, this was a last minute change. I decided to side 2 Dimensional Barrier.
Okay.
I don't believe I actually drew it all weekend. I might have drawn it once and it didn't matter. But Barrier was just like a good side card going first against Despia, against Punk Synchro, against all the decks where maybe Droll's not good against, maybe Token Collector's not good against. It was just that card to be able to just flip and know that even if I bricked and I flipped this card, I still get an extra turn. And the last card, this was my side deck choice over the third barrier, was actually Therion Stand Up. So this card, it's basically a Monster Reborn when you set it, or in the graveyard during either player's main phase. You can banish it, target a Therion you have on board and one in grave, and you equip the one from grave to the one on board. The reason it's super relevant is it's the same thing as Galaxy Cyclone and Token Collector, where if I drew it, it's really good because if I have a Therion on my grave, it's a Reborn. Or if I pitch it or mill it, it can still equip to another Therion on board, and because it's purple, it plays around Dark Ruler and Droplet.
Right.
So this is where the hot red over just having like Plague came up, where if you have hot red, you have your turn skip, and let's say you just have a Therion and they go Dark Ruler or Droplet, you can chain the stand up, either set and Reborn or in your graveyard to equip to a Therion on your board. And then because you activated the stand up that's purple, they're not going to ever pitch a purple card with Droplet. Right. You get to chain the stand up, and then now that you have chained something to those cards, you can chain your hot red to negate the Dark Ruler or Droplet. And then your chain will resolve, and then on the new, and like a new open game state, you can just skip their turn after.
Right, that's a super awesome way for basically almost an in-engine way to help play around cards that people are going to be sideboarding against you anyway. So I think that's a really cool tech for the deck.
Yeah, it's searchable with Lily too. So and technically you could dump it with the Therion engine too, or the Endless engine. So like you have so many ways to get to that card. If you open it, mill it, search it with Lily, dump it with the aggro system, it doesn't really matter. You just have so many ways to get to this one card that always plays around Dark Ruler and Droplet. And it actually came up once or twice in the tournament where I either played around Dark Ruler Droplet, or even just like you negate with a Regulus and then you equip another one to it with the trap. So then on your turn, on their turn, you have another negate and you get to keep your Regulus up. So it was super strong. I just didn't want to main it because it doesn't do anything going second, and going first, you already kind of have to be comboing for it to be good. Right. So I only wanted to side it when I knew for sure I was going first, and when I knew for sure I could take out other like brick cards for it. That was pretty much the deck. I went 9-1 before the last round, and then like I said, the last round I didn't really care very much. So the guy just kind of clapped me, and I didn't even really like super try because I already knew I was topping. And unfortunately I lost in top 64. Didn't get the prize card, but was really glad to be in the top cut again. I really love being in big top cuts like that. It's so much fun, so much pressure, so many people watching you. It's just such a great experience. So I wish I would have got further, but thank you to all the people that helped me with the deck. Thank you for Justin for destroying me the day before the event with Punk Synchro. Always opening Gamma right plus some, teleport.
Standard.
It was standard. Yeah, he was always open standard, and it really it was nice to get those like sloppy games out the way, or just the games where you just get rolled over, and then in the tournament it doesn't happen like that at all. Just takes that weight off your shoulder.
Yeah, I'm genuinely very happy you did so well that weekend. I know you were really disheartened in our playtesting going into the event. You playtested against quite a few people, and you were really second-guessing your list. And I know me and a bunch of the other friends, we were just trying to tell you, no, trust your list. It's already submitted. It's solid. And in the end, you had nothing to worry about. It performed perfect.
Yeah, no, I was definitely praying I didn't have to play against Punk Synchro, because I think that's your most volatile / worst matchup, because you can open Valor and Perm Ash and they can still just turn skip you and you lose, or they scythe block you and then you lose.
Right. Well, Kyle, thank you again for coming on the channel. I really appreciate it. Not only just showing off your deck profile, but at least giving people an idea of what your logic was when playing the deck and why you played what you played, and really just helping out people when maybe they want to try this deck out themselves. So thank you again, and I really appreciate you for coming on the channel.
Yeah, thank you so much. Cards and Coffee, man. Your editing is great, and we're going to get you up there. A lot of these Yugi tubers are gonna have a run for their money, man. No one's doing it like you. I appreciate it.
Oh, I appreciate it, man. Thank you so much. So that's all the time we have for today, guys. Thanks for tuning in. I really appreciate all the support you guys have been giving me. I hope this video helped you guys out, whether you're trying to learn the deck yourself to play or maybe how to counter it going forward. I think Kyle's list was really insane, and I'm looking forward to see what he can do in the future. Here's hoping to see you guys next time. Peace.